So today's episode, we're going to go over the framing, or really reframing, of North Star. Nothing about it is straightforward. Initially, everything you can see, everything you can look at is simply in the way. Everything has to be removed for something new to be put in place.
Today is our final frame removal. Last piece of rotten wood. It's got a few screws to remove. Let the last bit of her fall. Excited to see all the new nice ribs go in. As you can see, pretty much once I can't keep wood like this, otherwise it'll just infect the new wood. We do what we can to make sure that all the new wood going on is fresh and clean, and we'll keep this boat a nice historical monument at the marina for as long as possible. That's it!
Slowly, slowly, slowly. Okay, send it.
She wasn't in great shape when she arrived. You know, pumps were going as she was being towed up the river to her berth. So years of hauling cargo, being hard on a beach in the Arctic in the cold winter, left her in pretty poor shape. I mean, it was really a kind of a copper-bottomed miracle that she arrived here. The absolute most important thing when you haul the boat out of the water, if you're going to reconstruct her, is to retain the shape. I mean, what you have there is the shape. That's really what you have. So that you have to save, and you know, because of all the deterioration over years of use, etc., this can be really quite a difficult task in a vessel in the kind of shape North Star was in. So while the boat's in the water is really retaining the shape. The force of buoyancy is pushing up everywhere in the hull, and as long as the weight is reasonably distributed in the hull, nothing will happen to the boat when it's in the water. Of course, once you haul her out, especially an old wooden boat, you know, with lots of bad fastenings and rotten wood, unless she's really well supported right from the very beginning, she's going to change shape. She's going to distort. She's going to hog, high in the middle, because the ends are sagging down, or sag. And you know, sag is just kind of comes apart. The deck beams perhaps are rotten, and so you know, the boat just kind of gets beamier because there's nothing to hold it from just basically sagging outward. So the most important thing is that the boat's adequately supported once it's taken out of the water in order to retain the shape. But of course, because you've really got to start removing things, anything that's supporting the hull is going to be in the way. So you're constantly shifting blocking and supports in order to remove planking that's underneath. Doing too much at any one time, and you're gonna lose the shape. You need to have a plan. You know, most important thing. The method that's been chosen is to apply ribbons or, you know, battens, strips of wood down the length of the hull, crossing all the frames when planking is removed. So this will keep the frames in essentially the same position, even though the planking has been removed. And then these battens form the shape of the hull to which the new frames can be applied. To replace a frame, the crew first of all has to take a template or pattern of the shape of the frame as it sits in the vessel.
This is one of the way of making a template. So first of all, I want to have a clean surface of what I want to template and get some door skin. So I like to choose very thin door skin because the thicker you will get, the more away from your point you can be. So I just spread a piece of thin door skin all the way on my piece. You can see it here like this. Don't need to be flush to anything. I just want it to go all the way on my piece. And then after I get some little triangles, and with these points, that's where you get close to the points you want to get. So the stringers inside and the planking outside, for example. I also get where the frame ends. If I don't have anything to take points, for example, here you've got a big gap that I don't know what's here, I don't know what's here. I have to make myself a reference. So that's why we got a lot of ribbons in the boat like this. That's this kind of piece of wood are running all the way in the boat, and I can take a point here, for example. When I get all of these little triangles, I got the shape of my frame, because in this case it's a frame. And then after I have to get my bevel square, the bevels on different spots, and then you go to the bevel board, bevel gauge, whatever. I slide my bevel square, and boom, I got 34 here. I do this on some points all the way on the frame, mark it on the template. That's all I do my frames.
This is really a three-dimensional problem. Like if you look at, a typical frame, you can see it has a shape this way, the cross section through the vessel. Okay, it also has a shape this way, as you can see, this bevel. This bevel accommodates the fact that the planking is not crossing this frame at right angles, especially in the ends of the boat. It's quite an angle. So in order to make this template, they have to pick up both these shapes. In dealing with the bevel, the angle here may not in any way, relate to the angle down here. They're often much more parallel here, or right angle here, and often more and more and more as you go up. So you've got to, pick this bevel up continuously along several points along the surface. And often this is the part that's rotten, and it may involve some guesswork. Well, this is where the battens come in, because the battens are running this way down the hull. And they're making a fair line themselves naturally, because they're sitting on the tops of all the frames on the frames on either side. So you get the batten set up in the right spots, so places where you feel you may need to pick up the bevel, you pick it up off the batten, bang, you have the right bevel, you cut it on the frame, and then when you put the frame up in the vessel, it will lie correctly against the batten. Yeah, and some fun facts, that from antiquity, from 4,500 to 5,000 years ago, the Khufu boat, or Khufu boat, which was actually discovered at the foot of the Giza Pyramid in Egypt, is the oldest known, really well-preserved vessel of any size from antiquity. And it is framed. The shape of the vessel was really in the planking, but on the inside of the framing, there were battens which ran in section, up and down, but they were stitched to the planking. So really what they did is they kept the planking from coming apart in order that where the seams are corked, the planking didn't separate. That was basically the purpose of them. And in fact, there was in some of the more extreme vessels, including this vessel at 144 feet, incredible length, they had a guy system like that to keep the vessel from hogging, or sagging, excuse me. The ends would sag. They were so long and pointed and very little to support them. They actually had a framework that was like a mast and guy wires which ran fore and aft and everything in order to keep the ends from sagging. They realized this problem even 5,000 years ago. This is the earliest known framed vessel. Yes, well, it's, it would be among the earliest known vessels. So what you can really say is, as early as we know, vessels had frames of some kind. And in fact, when you look closely at Egyptian antiquity, you see that there are all kinds of different kinds of boats, but they actually used amazingly sophisticated framing that accommodated the natural forces exerted on the hull. Some interesting stuff from antiquity. Boats have been around for a long time. The kings in Egypt, that was their only means of transportation. Even when they went on the river, if they went up and down the river, they used boats. What can I say? They didn't even have camels, but they had boats. So here we are at North Star. Now behind me you can see the frames that have bolts through them. These are futtox frames, and these are made out of pieces, so you can see there are joints. That's where the bolts are. There's sawed to shape, and then they're notched so that they can be fitted together. Then there's bedding compound in there and bolted together. Now this is used in the ends of the boat where there's extreme curvature. Extremely difficult to get bent frames to wrap around this sharp bilge curve. The frame itself is made out of a number of pieces rather than being sawn out of one piece. In this area of the vessel, the majority of the vessel, in fact, the bilge curve is easy enough so that the frames can be put in place bent. They're not bent in one piece, they're laminated. In fact, you can see most of them consist of 3 pieces, but these pieces are continuous end to end in the frame. Up in the bow, we have another set of frames, 4 black locust sawed frames. Now these frames don't have a lot of curvature, but they serve 2 purposes. First of all, they're straight enough so that they can be sawed from one piece. So, you know, a sawed frame makes some kind of sense this way. It's easy to do once you have the shape. The second purpose that they serve is to maintain the shape of the vessel up forward. So you go and pick up the shape from the vessel, you saw some frames, you make new ones and you put them in place. Then you have that shape frozen into the reconstruction. And then immediately behind that, you start your bent or laminated frame. So this process puts some force on the battens, and you need to have the support at the ends in order to start with your bent frames. This is the purpose of these 4 forwardmost frames. As you can see, the crew's done a great job of getting all the frames up. They're all there, all 53 frames, port and starboard, all lined up, but there's still quite a bit of work to do. Number one, the frames have to be faired. So the shape of each frame as it finally sits in place in the hull is not initially line up perfectly with all the other frames. And so there's a process of reducing the shape, planing off the outer edges of the frame until everything lies fair. So this will consume a considerable amount of time. You can see the build stringers are in place. The beam shelf is sitting there. So pretty secure about the overall shape of the hull. The ends are well supported. The transom is in place. The shape is pretty well determined. However, we still have the issue of removing the keel, for instance, where the whole vessel is going to have to be adequately supported. This can only be done once a certain amount of the planking is in place. So with this in mind, the job goes on.